Hello everyone, I'm Breor and welcome back to Goodgame Empire. If you've been subscribed to my channel for a long time, you will perhaps remember that I used to make the occasional audio-only video. These were like podcasts, and the idea was that my subscribers could listen to them in the background while they played Goodgame Empire. I even designed what is, in my opinion, a cool slide viewers could use to navigate the whole playlist of these types of videos. Well, today audio-only is back, and our topic is going to be Alliance Leadership. Having played the game for over 4 years now, I have filled every role except for that of Alliance Leader itself, and we're going to talk about why that is. I created Breor on USA 1 during the spring of 2013, having experienced a great deal of misery on my very first account. I was hoping to get off to a fresh start, and I thought a great way to do that would be to form a new alliance with a friend I had just met in the area, Mr. Dennis 5. He became the Alliance Leader, and I became an officer, because back then there were no specialized officer roles like War Marshal, Recruiter, Deputy, etc. The alliance we started was called Dark Army, and much to my surprise, we were actually very successful. I want to analyze why that is. I think a huge factor in our favor was actually our location on the world map. I had moved my castle to the near edge of the map in order to capture the 3 superfood outposts I have now, so the players who started up around us were all new and seeking a good alliance. 2013 was also a pretty strong growth period for the game, so I imagine if you tried to do the same thing now, you wouldn't be as successful. The other thing I think we did well on Dark Army is we were proactive recruiters. We messaged people in our area who were weaker and stronger than us, and we weren't going to give up when people said no. We were probably pretty annoying, but it worked. Instead of spamming the players in our area with generic recruitment messages repeatedly, we only did that once for the purposes of opening up a conversation. Players who didn't reply couldn't be recruited, but we strove to make a connection over time, even with players who declined our offer of membership. One such player was Stubby, a grizzled and moderately aggressive character whom we came to learn only had one leg, hence the name. Stubby was stronger than we were at the time and thus unwilling to join, but once he saw how our alliance was growing, he did finally allow himself to be recruited. Another important member we recruited was Turth. Turth had experience in prior wars and has to this day been a consistent and active player. It's very important for an alliance to have a strongest player who teaches others how to play the game and ultimately carries everyone else on their backs. We got very lucky, for a player I recruited in his infancy turned out to be a big ruby buyer who filled this role perfectly. This player was D. Thompson 22. DTH, as we called him, was eventually recruited away from our alliance to join Dream Team, but we managed to recruit another strong player by the name of Zombie Master. You may have heard of Zombie Master. After growing for a short while within our team, he went to Kingdom of Neff and essentially became their War Marshal. He ran masses and posted the team's battle reports in the forums. He actually turned into a pretty nasty character on the forums, if I'm honest. He would later pull the rest of our team to Con when Dark Army was finished, but I'll speak more about that later. For now, Dark Army was a growing group of active players who were interested in starting up some wars with other local groups. We still had to be careful. One of the suckiest things about Goodgame Empire, in my opinion, is how alliances can become subs of other alliances and form huge overprotective families. Spotting an independent alliance of about our size that we could go to war with was difficult, and because we ourselves were independent, we became good targets for other players to attack. We eventually did declare war on the Alliance Lady Puffers, and masked them successfully at least once. The war was not a personal one, and I remember it being over quite quickly. What the war made clear was that we were going to have to find a new method of obtaining fair glory hits and bringing PvP action to our alliance. At around this time, Mr. Dennis 5 became quite busy with college, and, admittedly to my dismay, promoted DTH to become the new leader of the alliance. I'm sure I wanted a crack at leadership at the time, and since I had been the co-founding member of the alliance, Dennis's decision to pick someone else was surprising and disappointing. DTH's leadership did not go well. While he was a strong member indeed, he was a very lax leader and left the group with no goals to achieve. While I'm not saying I would necessarily have been a better leader, I do think it's important for alliance leaders to consider more than just might when issuing promotions. I solved the problem of how to bring about fair PvP when I introduced a new program that I called Terror Tuesday. The idea behind this program was that officers could help all of the members in the alliance find a good target to attack, and that we could all send our attacks to land at around 3 AM on Tuesday. No two members were permitted to attack the same player or the same alliance, so this helped us avoid starting wars with groups who would overpower us. It also taught our members more about cooperation and proper timing in case we needed to launch real mass attacks in the future. Running the event was quite fun for me, but I believed it caused some headaches for Stubby, who had become the leader of the alliance after DTH had left for Dream Team. Stubby never participated himself, but he did have to deal with a great number of messages from players and alliances whom we had attacked. All of the attacks we conducted as part of Terror Tuesday were fair, so our targets had no reason to complain, but complain they did nevertheless. Speaking from experience, I know I would not be a good diplomat, because getting messages of this nature would really not make me happy. Though he did come to resent the thing which made Dark Army fun for the rest of us, Stubby was probably the best leader Dark Army had. Stubby was the type of character who didn't normally reply to messages, which is actually a good trait in a leader because it causes others to work for your attention. It's probably not a very good trait for making friends though. Stubby also had a healthy skepticism of new members. I personally believe that being paranoid of spies tears an alliance apart, but Stubby's expectations of new members served as a form of quality control over all those we recruited. Stubby was very different from myself, and I learned by watching him that I probably wouldn't do a very good job of holding the crown. Ironically, I became leader at about the time when my interest in doing so faded, since Stubby promoted me to that position and left to join a Neff branch with some of his former friends. I said at the beginning of this video that I have never been a leader, but I should now qualify that statement. I certainly have held the crown before, but it's always been in a transitional role or to temporarily relieve someone else from the duty. Dark Army had been experiencing some rough times, so I took the opportunity to merge it into an alliance called Imperial VSK. Turth, who had become my second-in-command, didn't stay long in VSK, and I eventually followed both him and Stubby into Neff. Imperial VSK would become Fluffy Unicorns, which is currently the most powerful alliance on the USA 1 server, so maybe we should have stayed. I've talked at length already about my own history and that of my first alliance, but before we move on to my Kingdom of Neff experiences, let's review some of the lessons I did learn, or at least should have learned, from my time at Dark Army. I think it's fair to say that I was in part responsible for the alliance's success. Most of the recruiting was indeed done by me, and I also had a hand in conducting mass attacks and advising Mr. Dennis 5 on promotions. I made an alliance website for the group that actually still exists, so if you want to see it, there will be a link to it in this video's description. The biggest lesson I learned was that it's better never to accept the mantle of leadership. The game is a lot more fun to play from the perspective of a deputy. As the leader of a small to mid-size alliance, you'll have to be dealing with petty complaints from inside and outside of your alliance. You'll have to represent your group when negotiating with bullies who just happen to be stronger and more well-equipped. You'll be expected to actively engage in texting other people to get them online, or using the group's preferred method of communication, so if you aren't comfortable with these things, the role is probably not for you. Kingdom of Neff uses Skype, other groups might use a voice chat program like Ventrilo, and in Dark Army, we made use of Chatsy. In other words, as leader, you will be preoccupied with meaningless small tasks and messaging, the one benefit being that you are almost always informed of what's going on. As deputy, you can get this same benefit without being bogged down by all that nonsense. Deputies still work for the benefit of the alliance, but normally they pioneer and invent, while the leader cleans up the messes of ongoing issues. My advice to you is, if you want to enjoy the game, find a group of friends you're comfortable playing with, and turn down any opportunity to become leader. But let's say you're in the unfortunate position of already being a leader. There are a few ways you can minimize the workload, and you might want to know about them for the sake of your own sanity. The first is to write a purposed alliance description. You might include in your description a list of alliances with whom you are friends, to discourage being accidentally hit by them. You might mention that your alliance conducts fair glory attacks, and complaints will be ignored. You might mention that there will be consequences for those who come to steal your alliance's resource villages, or to claim the property of members who are in ruins. There are an endless number of things you could put in your alliance description, but the key is finding an attitude that matches the size and capability of your alliance. I'm currently a member of the Unforgiven, so let me use our alliance description as an example. I'll paraphrase here, even though I think the actual language is fairly important. Welcome to the Unforgiven. Our friends include Khan, Grumpy King, and Fluffy Unicorns. We play by the developer's rules and therefore make and accept glory hits on both castles and outposts. Stay away from our resource villages or you'll be stripped. Complain to the leader about a fair glory hit, and you can expect to be attacked by him. Don't hide behind your fires, man up and put them out. They aren't a smart defensive strategy, and this is a war game. Note how aggressive this alliance description is, and how likely it is to discourage somebody from writing to our leader to complain. Having just recently been in the server war, I, as a member of the Unforgiven, can appreciate that our alliance is serious about PvP. The Unforgiven is currently the 7th most powerful alliance on the server, so we are more than capable of backing this description up. But imagine for a second reading this on the page of a smaller alliance. It would be laughable and not nearly as effective. If you were the leader of a medium-sized alliance, your description could say similar things, but it would need to take a different tone. Another thing you as leader can do is delegate the tasks and promotions, but you must do so thoughtfully and carefully. If you promote too many players, you will make promotions meaningless and cause confusion and angst amongst the hierarchy of leadership. Instead, take the time to recognize the individual interests of your players and assign them the roles they are best suited to. If it seems like promotions wouldn't matter to some players, those players should definitely be left at member status. Kingdom of Neff 2, my previous alliance, handled promotions pretty effectively. They were sparse, but all of the members who were permanent members of the alliance were given a promotion to sergeant. This made them feel like they were invested in the alliance and had been recognized in some form or fashion. When I was eventually promoted, it was to War Marshal, which was a role I had experience with and could fill. I did end up running masses in Kingdom of Neff 2. If you have talented players in your alliance, you as a leader should be putting them to work for the purposes of accomplishing your goals. You can make their goals and your goals one and the same, because when you promote somebody, they too will want to lead a larger and more powerful alliance. Something to avoid is password sharing and multi-accounting, since this practice ultimately leads to security flaws and a lack of enjoyment in the game. I have never given my password to anybody else, even when I could have done so to protect my account from attacks when I was unavailable. Multi-accounting also causes problems because it's difficult to determine who knows what. In addition, you'll be splitting one active member between 2 or more roster slots if you choose to allow multi-accounting. It's a bad deal no matter how you approach it. Ultimately, Dark Army failed because the game was losing popularity, and the leaders became less interested in continuing in a medium-sized alliance. Goodgame Studios introduced new benefits to being in a larger alliance. Kingdom of Neff had control over alliance properties such as capitals and metropolises, and the in-game events were also beginning to reward bigger alliances with important prizes. Nowadays, playing in a medium-sized alliance can be very unrewarding because 1, you won't be able to get the important prizes other alliances can grab, and 2, medium-sized alliances are often targeted by bigger ones. If you don't have a solid base of leaders, players will be leaving your alliance as soon as they can for a chance to go somewhere bigger and better. That doesn't mean that having a successful mid-size alliance is impossible, however. The trick, I think, is finding a solid group of players who are willing to pass up on other opportunities for a chance to do something meaningful in the game. I'm going to end this video here, but I'll talk about my experiences in Kingdom of Neff in a second part to be released on the channel within a few days. Thanks so much for listening, and thank you to all of the folks who subscribed after Goodgame Studios promoted one of my videos via email. Let me know in the comments if audio only is still a good format for this channel. I've been Breor, and I'll see you in the next video.